Are you an idiot? Well, you're in good company. There are about 8 billion idiots on this planet, and that number grows every day. Don't be the guy or gal that says, "I'm not an idiot," because that makes you the biggest idiot of all. We all have our moments of brilliance and our moments of idiocy. Embrace it, folks. Don't be ashamed. Without those idiot moments, we would never be able to appreciate our brilliance. Welcome to I Love My Idiot, a podcast about the idiots we love, the idiots we loathe, and the idiots we can't seem to avoid. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Visit our website at ilovemyidiot.com.
Welcome to another episode of I Love My Idiot.
I'm your equal host, Clyde November.
And I'm Rosie November.
And we're glad to have you joining us today.
So we had kind of an interesting day today.
Yeah, we went shoe shopping.
We did. We went shoe shopping. And now this is like an ordeal because when we go shoe shopping, I have an idea of what I'm looking for. And it's very specific.
But there's also one major hurdle. Rosie has small feet. We were actually told at a place we have youth sizes, yet
none of them will fit you.
Yes. They're like, yeah, we have youth sizes that start at like a youth 4, go to 5, 6.
Yeah.
We're like, nope, we're going to need a youth 3 for Rosie's feet.
Exactly.
You've got small feet, Rosie.
I do, yet I would like to wear adult shoes. And I know that this is, a real issue. Anyways, so I have a very specific idea of what I want to buy for these shoes. And poor Clyde, I make you go everywhere around town. We stopped at 6 shoe stores today before we found the shoe.
Not 6 stores. We stopped at exactly 6 stores. Exactly 6.
Yeah.
Not one of them could we find the right shoes.
I know. We finally found some shoes, but they weren't perfect.
When you're in your 6th store, it's it'll do.
You start making sacrifices in terms of what you wanted, and it's these are good enough, you know? In the long run, I'm probably going to go online and buy the shoes I want anyways.
Which is what we should have done in the beginning. We would have saved money on gas.
We'll be out $100, but whatever. It's fine. So,
it's all right.
Yeah.
A girl can never have too many shoes, and as your husband and lover, it's my job to spoil you and make sure you have, a good amount of shoes in your closet.
I have this thing where if it's not exactly what I was thinking of, I will sit and just stare at the options for a long time, and I cannot make a decision.
Yeah, and there's always something wrong with every one of them.
Yeah.
You said, I'm looking for black shoes, and I found this really cool pair of shoes, but apparently they were dark navy blue, not quite black.
Yeah.
And then there was another one that had a gold band on the side, and you're like, nope.
I know, they weren't the ones.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So, a little pickiness, but, I want you to have the right pair of shoes. So it's all good. So after our adventures of shoe shopping, we then go to a restaurant, and it was a pretty nice restaurant. Mm-hmm. However, our waiter was kind of an interesting fella.
Yeah, the most cocky waiter I've ever met. He was way too cool for his job.
Yeah, he did his job in a way where he was trying to make it seem like he just flat out didn't care about his job.
Yeah.
But not in the kind of way where it's I hate this job, I don't care. He was presenting it as, I'm so good at my job that I can barely pay attention to your order and still get it right.
Exactly.
And
he got it wrong.
Well, I don't know. I did ask for ranch dressing, and on the side, I was expecting a little small serving cup. He brought me a bowl of ranch dressing.
And the shocking thing is you ate every bit of that ranch dressing. I was like, dude, that's a lot of ranch.
Yeah. I had to dip my sandwich in it.
But he did make the fatal flaw, which is not refilling our water.
Oh, yeah. That is my number one pet peeve.
Right. You lose half your tip with Clyde if you don't refill the water.
Especially, I need that water to make sure, my throat isn't going to crack in the middle of this thing.
Right. Dehydration is a real issue for podcasting.
It is.
But yeah, it was really interesting because he seemed like he really cared about his job, but then he just didn't do a very good job of it.
Yeah. When I have a waiter, I want them to be polite, be genuine, but be invisible at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want someone that's overly friendly that
Right.
thinks that we're going to be friends by the end. I don't want someone that walks over to take my order and sits at my table. That is annoying, right?
I'm the opposite. I want my waiter to be my best friend. I'm like, by the end of this, we have a relationship, you know?
And it's interesting because at the end of the bill, when we're ready to talk about what kind of tip we're going to leave, sometimes you'll be like, well, that was the most unfriendly waiter ever.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, no, that person was great. They filled my water and never tried to have some stupid conversation. And so I'm like, they deserve full tip, maybe a little extra.
Dude, if I get a smile and a partial conversation, I will double their tip. Like, I love it when my waiter is friendly with me.
Yeah, and I'm the opposite. I'm like, it took too long to take our order and get our food in because he was too busy trying to chat with us. So we have different philosophies when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's led to some arguments and disputes throughout our marriage, but
we make it work.
we make it work. And a lot of times it comes down to rock, paper, scissors, and we find out if the guy's getting a tip or not, right?
No, here's the deal. Clyde walks away and I slip him a 20. Like, that's what happens. Well, we're actually really excited because we're back in Salt Lake City. Another Claudia episode. Welcome to the podcast, Claudia.
Thanks.
Yeah, are you so excited?
Yes, and I have to say, I heard what you guys just said about waiters, and the waiters that I hate are the ones that are like, so what are we ordering today? And it's like, we're not ordering anything. You are not a part of this equation. I hate that.
Claudia,
Or when they sit at your table to take your order, it's like, dude.
I don't want to make eye contact. Just take my order.
yeah, I don't want to be friends. I don't want eye contact.
I also hate it when they don't write down your order, and then you're like, are you getting this?
You're like, they're for sure going to get that order wrong. No question.
Well, I'm telling you, there's some orders where if you don't write them down, it's going to be fine. Rosie is not one of those people because of all the things she's allergic to. So there's always all these like stipulations and changes, and they always get it wrong. It's so frustrating.
I know. Well, it's hard to be a really picky eater, but then also to have allergies because my orders are always special.
Well, and I'm amazed that we found a place between what you're doing with your diet, what you have to do, and then there's a lot of things that Roy and I have to do with our diets.
Yeah.
And then there's Clyde who's like, bring me a bowl of ranch. Can I have a spoon with this? I need to drink it. Can I have a
exactly.
Man,
in fact, all I want is ranch. That's it. You know?
my food was
Can I
good.
get a side of ranch?
I had a buffalo chicken sandwich, and I asked for ranch because I like to dip it in. And the guy, he judged me correctly. Like, he wasn't a great waiter, but his one good move was bringing a bowl of ranch.
Yeah.
Well, what I thought was funny is when you tell him, and can I get ranch? And he's like, instead of blue cheese, I know. It's like, dude, this guy's like reading your mind.
Like, are you a waiter or a psychic?
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Well, he wasn't psychic enough to know when we were thirsty. Hello.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think waiting tables is just his side job because he's probably in some sort of band, considering he had like full sleeve tattoos on both sides of his arms.
I just thought he just does not have the skills to back up this ego. Like, it was crazy because it was like, I mean, I have seen some really good waiters who know they're good. So I was expecting him to be really good, and then it was like kind of mediocre at best. It's like, okay. I mean, we had to wait forever for the check, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we had to ask for the dessert menu twice.
That is true.
Sorry,
Rosie likes
had to
dessert.
jump in because it's like, it almost kills me to sit there and listen to your banter and not say anything.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, we have laid down the law hard that you don't get to speak till we introduce you.
Speaking of which, the last podcast you broke at least 2 of the rules. So I think we need to revisit the rules before we get started.
Yes, I've written them down.
Oh, good hell.
So,
And by the way, Clyde,
Podcast is over.
so Claudia and I were shooting off some ideas earlier today about what we would talk about, and she mentioned something that I will add to the end of your list as a new rule that we do not talk about this thing on the podcast.
got it.
All right.
Which shall not be spoken.
So, in other words, something we're going to speak about just so we know not to speak about.
Not to
just
speak
long
about
enough.
All right.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the poop stuff.
All right.
Right.
Go ahead.
Rule
Dude,
number 1.
You already broke a rule of the podcast. No poop stuff on the
Hey,
podcast.
You're welcome, everyone.
We haven't refreshed that, so maybe she forgot. But rule number 1, we don't apologize.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Get out. Get out. All right. Rule number 2, shit's ready when Rosie sits down.
Yes.
That's more of a, I don't want to actually do anything to prep, so Clyde,
Dude.
just make sure everything's ready to go.
And it's never happens. It never happens. Stuff is never ready when I sit down.
This is a hard job, okay? When we go on
What's
the road,
so hard about it?
Andrew doesn't come with us.
Oh my gosh.
Andrew's not even there at your house.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't seen Andrew in 2 months.
I don't think
so
we're
I don't
waiting
even
for
know if he's
Andrew
still
anymore.
Well,
employed.
I've talked to Andrew on the phone, and I will tell you, he's in good health.
Oh,
He's
good. I'm
fine.
glad he's still alive.
Okay, so
Andrew, come back to work.
Hey,
All right.
Andrew.
rule number 3, we always produce on Sunday. Rule number 4, that's what she said jokes are forbidden.
See, and
Yeah.
I do not agree
Yes.
with this rule. That you are limiting your listeners.
You're limiting Claudia's humor, because if
Dude,
you
that's all I
knew
say.
Claudia, that's
I've
all
been
the
here
jokes
for
she says.
4.5 hours, and I've heard at least 10 that's what she said jokes.
There were some perfect ones when we were at dinner. You have to admit.
That is true.
And dinner is always a time that's good for that's what she said jokes, because you talk about meat a lot,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, but I don't know how me saying, Clyde, that's a really big bowl of ranch deserves a that's what she said,
Hey.
but whatever.
Big.
All right, rule number 5, and this is the rule you just broke: no poop jokes or stories.
Claudia. Keep the poop outside of the podcast.
Sorry.
Rule number 6: guests don't speak during the introduction and
La, la,
closing.
la, 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 la. Nobody heard that one.
Now, last time you were on, we gave you permission to speak during the
I
closing.
know, and then I drew a blank.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of
I know.
anything to say.
We finally are like, okay, go ahead and speak, and you're like, I have nothing to say.
I don't know what to say.
Dude, that's the way to stop
Then
Claudia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, number
Yeah.
7. We
I
don't.
only like it if I'm breaking a rule. Sorry. Go ahead.
Don't interrupt. No, I'm joking.
Dude, another rule. Okay, go
Number
ahead.
7, we don't do puns. Your
Yeah.
November rain pun was about the worst thing that's ever been on this podcast.
I roll.
And rule number 18, no Bin Laden talk.
Oh.
Yeah. Actually,
Well, I don't
no,
think I
it's
violated
not.
that one.
It's not Bin Laden. It was no terrorists.
Well, yeah, but
yeah.
But it was specific to Bin
Yeah.
Laden at one point. Are you done with the rules now?
No, because Claudia said
Now,
earlier
wait,
today.
wait. Before you get to that, some people might be wondering, how come there's rules 1 through 7 and then 18? And the answer is because we kind of make up these rules as we go.
I know, and,
And
there's a placeholder for the rest.
When I made up the Bin Laden rule, I didn't know what rule we were on. So
Yeah.
I just threw out a really high number. So by the end of
Rule 1000.
this podcast, we hope to, eventually fill in the rest of those rules.
I
But-
added a rule 16 too the other day. I can't
Did
remember
you?
what it was,
Oh,
but
dang it.
when we'll have
Never
to go
wrote it
back and
down.
re-listen to the few episodes ago to figure out what that
If
rule
anyone
was.
has listened to recent episodes and heard of rule number 16, make sure you let us know. I love myidiot.com.
Okay, what number am ruling?
Okay, rule number 8. What's this new rule?
No porn talk on the podcast, Claudia.
Bam, bam.
No porn talk?
Serious, yeah. So Claudia has a theory that our Google searches are fake, okay? They're not fake. We don't make them up ahead of time. I literally grab Clyde's phone and look. And so she overheard the episode where you took my phone and did my Google searches. And she was like, Rosie, it would be hilarious if you had Google searched, does Chris Pine do porn?
That is funny. Everybody has to admit, I'm onto something gold in there, right?
Now, I do love Chris Pine. Chris Pine, if you're out there, you're my number one. But
Dude. I thought I was your number one.
I don't know what to say right now.
So then I was like, dude, it needs to be an official rule that we do not talk about porn on the podcast.
Boring.
So add that. Rule number 8.
Rule number 8. No porn talk.
Yeah.
I did talk about porn when I was on one time because I said that I went to the people I babysat for and I looked at porn. I drank all their alcohol and I smoked cigarettes.
And you were violating a rule then and you're violating a rule now.
Get used to it.
Well,
number 8.
I also once said that we don't do Claudia's Google searches because there's no telling what kind of pornographic
I
stuff
don't
would
even
be on
want to
there.
know what's on Claudia's phone.
It is all very boring and frumpy. I guarantee it. I have lived a boring life.
Dude, earlier
Who Googles
today.
boring and frumpy porn? That's weird.
Yeah. Earlier
weird
today.
fetish.
Nights. Let me just say.
Oh my gosh.
All of these things with the rules, like rules do not apply to me. I do not adhere to rules.
You are a rebel.
Clearly.
It's just the way life is. Like,
fact-
Mom used to make checklists, and I would refuse to do things if it was on a list.
Yeah, every
Yeah.
rule Mom and Dad ever made, you
Oh.
intentionally broke.
Absolutely. Like, you just don't tell me what to do. And I don't know if you remember this or not, Clyde, but when I was in my 20s, so you were probably like 10, I went away to London.
I remember.
Okay, and then I came back, and there was no room at the inn. So Mom and Dad said I had to share a room with you. So here I am.
How old is Clyde at this
He's
point?
10.
Well,
at best.
here's the thing.
Oh my gosh.
Claudia and Chloe used to always share a room.
We did.
And then when you moved out, Chloe finally had her own room. But when you were coming back, she pitched a fit about having to share a room with
So
you
it was
again.
like, who has to be with Claudia?
Yeah, because she said it was so traumatic sharing a room with you.
Clyde
So
draws the short straw.
yeah, I happen to have bunk beds in my room, so
Well, I will say in Chloe's defense, when we were little kids, we had a double bed, and I had broken my arm years and years and years ago. So at one point, I told her, "Oh, the doctor said I have to sleep with my arm all the way out."
Stretched
and so
out.
I would
Oh
get
my gosh.
the entire bed. Oh, and she would just be on this little corner.
Oh my
and
gosh.
So then later in life, she broke her arm, and the first thing she said to me is, "The doctor never said that I have to sleep with my arm out." And I'm like, I made that up.
yeah.
So yeah, I
Oh
did
my
torture
gosh.
the girl.
Well,
But anyways,
and this
so
is the messed up thing.
Yeah.
How far apart are you guys in age?
we're 8 years apart.
8 years apart, and Mom and Dad put you guys in one
I
bed.
know.
to
And
share.
like, now we have like single beds, and like I was 16 and I had to sleep with my 8-year-old sister. Okay,
Oh my
guys? Like,
gosh.
you just don't know how annoying that is, and so I'm sure it was annoying for her, and it was annoying
Yeah.
for me. So I feel bad for both of us, and yes, I do blame Mom and Dad. So, anyways, so I come back. Apparently, you drew the short straw, and so you end up with me. And so I come in and I'm just like, dude, I cannot believe I have to share a room with Clyde. This is ridiculous. And so I walk into the room and he's like, listen to me. Mom said I get to make the rules. Rule number 1, I'm in charge. Rule number 2, I'm in charge. And I was like, Clyde, shut up and get out of my face. Like, seriously. And you looked so devastated because it's like, you were like on this power trip because
Yeah.
it's like, Mom said that I'm in charge. And I was just like, dude, you're not in charge of me. Get away from me.
Yeah.
You were like devastated.
Dude, it's good to know that even at age 8, you give you an inch and you take a mile.
That's right.
Like, you still do that today.
That's what she said.
Oh my gosh, that is a rule.
Yes,
My bad.
high five.
No,
Yes.
Don't touch me.
do not
Yeah.
touch her or high five.
Dang it. Oh,
Well,
I tried.
I'm sorry. You know, I like things to be structured, and I like them to be structured according to my liking. So, you were literally the worst roommate I had in my childhood.
You're welcome. You liked living with me as an adult, though.
And I roomed with Claude, and you want to know what we
Oh
did
my
for
gosh.
What?
fun? Just beat the shit out of Clyde. So between you, who only lived with me for like a week and a
I know.
half,
I was like, I am so out of here.
and Claude, I picked Claude because, you know, at least with Claude, there was no expectation that I was going to get to pick the rules. It was always his room, and I was, you know, he would draw a line in the room, but it would like give me like a foot in the corner and he'd say, "Don't step into my side of the room." I'd be like, "Yes, sir."
I
know.
Oh my
This
gosh.
is starting to break my
I know.
heart. We just crossed the line into
Yeah.
sadness.
Dude, Claude was an awesome
can
brother.
we add
though.
rule number 9,
I
no sadness
idolized
on the
him.
podcast?
No, sometimes life takes you there.
Yeah.
That's true. We're just keeping it real
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Claudia, you have listened to all of the episodes.
Yes.
Lots of times.
Yes.
Your least favorite, though, are the ones where we're too serious, right?
I'm always about the funny jokes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Do you think we're funny?
Not really.
Oh,
Well,
whatever.
I must think you're somewhat funny, or else I wouldn't listen to you.
Yeah. No, we're
I
funny.
think you're capable of being funny. Would I say you're funny?
Yeah.
That's a different story.
Well, the
Yeah.
truth is, when I was younger, it was kind of a dream of mine to be like a stand-up comedian, or at least like
Yeah.
give it a try.
yeah.
But honestly, I'm so cripplingly shy
Yeah.
that getting up in front of people is just terrifying. So I figure, this is the perfect outlet for that. So I do try to be funny, but I don't try to be funny all the time. you know?
Yeah.
I just want to be real. I want
Yeah.
people to see the real Clyde. Sometimes I try to tell jokes and make people laugh, but sometimes it's,
Gonzo socks and all.
yeah.
And with Clyde, about at least half of his jokes don't hit, where he has to explain the joke to me. So I'm like, if you have to explain it, it wasn't funny, Clyde.
That's hurtful. The thing is I don't fully blame Claudia for being a rule breaker and being a rebel and an outlier, because it kind of runs in our blood, and not
does. It's
necessarily
genetic.
on the November side, but on my mother's side of the family. We are related to perhaps the coolest and most unique grandpa ever.
It's true.
And
he was a specimen.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
are actually going to dedicate this episode to our grandpa. His name was Rex, and
Yep.
as you guys know, I also have a son named Rex. That's not a coincidence.
I
Named
also-
after the best grandpa ever.
Yeah. And so he was a rule breaker, and he was a rebel. He was an awesome grandpa. What do you remember about grandpa?
There's a number of things. First of all, if the first thing when you walked into the house, he'd be like, "What kind of pop do you want, Coors or Bud?" And just remember that our mother is like the prudest person.
Yeah.
So we
I don't
were
even think
always
she's-
like, "Grandpa!"
Yeah. I don't even think she's ever tried alcohol.
No,
No,
never,
definitely not.
Never. It's never touched her.
She
lips.
probably doesn't even know what it smells
But
like.
Grandpa, he was a partier, and
Yeah.
so Grandpa did drink quite a bit. Mom grew up around it, but she never partook.
She never
basically.
dabbled.
The other thing I remember about him, I don't know if you remember this, but he would think it was funny to corrupt us. So he would tell dirty jokes all the time.
Oh my
His
gosh.
I
favorite
remember-
joke was like, knock knock,
Who's there?
lettuce.
Lettuce who?
Let us turn up and pee. And you would tell that all the time.
Oh my gosh.
Anyways, and then the other thing he would do is he would just throw out random cuss words. And so I always heard all these cuss words from Grandpa. And then also when he would come to visit, he would buy us lottery tickets because I think he thought it was funny to get his little Mennonite grandchildren to gamble. And so we just thought it was normal. And I remember one time one of your little friends came with us. Grandma and Grandpa came to town. They took us to pizza or something like that. And then Grandpa went and bought lottery tickets and just started passing them out to everybody. And your little friend was mortified. So he went home and told his mom. And then his mom called our mom and was like, "Your dad bought my son a lottery ticket." And Mom's like, "Oh yeah, he just does that." She's not even thinking anything of it. But
One time Claude was in town, and Claude told me to shut up. And I said, "Whoa, that's a bad word," because the kids were there, right? And it was when they were young enough that, we
don't say that
Yeah, we
word.
don't
Yeah.
want them saying shut up. Right afterwards, Rex says to Uncle Claude, "Did Aunt Claudia teach you all your bad words?"
Why, yes.
Right?
Yes, she did.
Because you are playing the role of Grandpa Rex.
I am.
For my children.
And I take great pride in that. Like, a lot of times I am the inappropriate one in our family. I know this will shock all of your listeners.
Oh, my gosh.
So it's like, you know, if somebody's going to swear in front of mom or, you know, say some inappropriate thing, it's usually me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
it's
yeah.
definitely you.
And then I'm very unapologetic about it. That I will not apologize for because I think it's part of my job is to keep it real with people and kind of let's have a sense of humor about some of these things.
And you pass on the heritage. Some people have commented that we call our son Rex Little Rex sometimes, and that is actually why, because we have a Grandpa Rex.
Yeah.
My kids love you, and as the rebel aunt, they just adore you. You teach them stuff that would probably mortify us if we knew everything you taught them. But
sure. That's my job in the family.
So
just like I showed you rated R movies.
Oh, yeah.
But I haven't shown any of those to your kids.
In fact, I remember
allegedly
being about 13 years old, and we rented The Postman.
Oh, no.
And there was a nude scene in there, and I was like 13, sitting there like, oh my gosh. But, I mean, I enjoyed it, but
obviously.
All right, sorry, we're not supposed to talk about porn. I forgot.
Yeah, seriously, Clyde.
Let the record reflect. I'm not the one that brought it up. It was Clyde.
My bad. So, have you had any experiences taking my kids out? Because from time to time, you'll come to town and take my kids out, or you know.
No, yeah. And I mean, I'll take them and do all kinds of stuff. But one time comes to mind, and it was when actually little Rosie was in the hospital. And so I took the boys.
Rex and James?
Yeah, so that you guys could deal with everything. And so I told them, I'll take you guys to this little water park that was in the town you were living in. And so we went to the store, and they just started getting really rambunctious. And I'm like, you guys, seriously, if you don't stop, we're not going. And then all of a sudden, Rex turns to James and he's like, James, be careful. Claudia gets angry.
Well, and that's the funny thing. You don't have kids.
Right.
And so here's the thing. Like, when you have kids.
She's got
all
3
those
kids.
Dogs.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but kids.
Right. But when you have kids, you have an ability that you gain over time to be able to tune things out. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so when the kids are being obnoxious, you just ignore them. But you don't have that ability because you haven't developed that skill yet.
No.
And so every time they started being annoying, and I notice anytime we're around and they start like getting into stuff, you're always like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Kids, hey, come on.
Yeah.
I turn into Dad.
Yeah, you remind me of Dad a lot.
I was like, dude, that sounds just like Papa November right there.
Exactly.
I've never really noticed that. So, like, I don't know if it's just because you guys are all Novembers and you're you and you notice things like that. I've never noticed that. So when you told me that story because you came to the hospital and I was like laughing hysterically, I was like, I've never even seen you get angry like with the kids. So
I'm like, oh yeah, there was some rage. Just kidding. No, but I think it's funny because when they said it, at first I was like kind of hurt. It hurt my feelings. Like I'm like, dude, I'm the cool aunt, you know? So I have my own kids so I can focus on the nieces and nephews. And then I was like, nah, I'm okay with them being a little afraid of me. Because then they listen when I'm like, hey, knock it off.
A good amount of fear is good. And like I've told you many times, we're not raising free-range children. Right.
But it also explains, so a few weeks ago when I was at your house, I went into James and I'm like, James, who's your favorite aunt? And I always do this to your kids because I think it's funny to watch them squirm. And I'm always like, you better say me because like I'm the one asking. And then James mentions somebody that's not even family. And then I'm like, that's not even a real aunt. And he's like, but that's my favorite aunt. And I said, you need to pick a real aunt. And he's like, okay, fine. And then he picks a real aunt. It was pretty funny.
And didn't he choose you?
Yeah, he did on that one. Sometimes I don't buy it, though. You know how it is.
Well, and here's the thing. Because of the way Rosie was raised, where everyone was an aunt and uncle or a grandma and grandpa, she kind of did that with our kids, too.
Right.
So
it's very confusing.
It is, because I'm like, he's not your aunt. Or she. He's definitely not your aunt. He's your uncle.
Yeah, their
Listen.
go-to babysitter.
Just because he was born an uncle and now he's an aunt, it's fine. He can be their favorite aunt, okay?
Yeah, so I'm sorry, but, try harder, Claudia. Try harder.
Sorry.
I mean, when you're competing with
A babysitter that sees them every single day.
Well, and I think if I just would quit yelling at your kids, but I'm not putting up with that.
No, you got to lay down the law.
You do, especially with our kids.
But you would think me teaching them all the bad words would make up for it.
They'll appreciate that later.
They will, because honestly, that's one of the things with Grandpa that I value the most is just all of those funny, inappropriate things. And it's really funny that Mom never batted an eye at it because she was so used to it, But, he had a heart of gold, but man, he was inappropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think he really enjoyed the fact that it was his opportunity to teach these overly religious little children a little bit of the dark side,
That's right. In fact, I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but Grandpa had this naked lady cup.
Oh, I remember the naked lady cup.
That says Rex on it, and it's like the handle is a naked lady fully arched back. So like you're holding her whole body to drink. That's the handle of the cup. Anyways, when Grandpa died, you guys wanted all of these sentimental things, and like Dad called me and he's like, okay, we're dividing up all of Grandma and Grandpa's stuff. What would you like? And I'm like, yeah, all I really want is that naked lady cup. And Dad started laughing so hard and he's like, okay. And then next thing you know, in the mail, here came my naked lady cup. And every once in a while, I'll pull it out. And it's really funny because it's kind of embarrassing because it is like fully naked lady.
Oh, yeah.
Like there is no hiding this. And it is a tall cup. So it's probably a good foot tall or something. Maybe not quite a foot, but pretty darn close. So anyways, I was showing some of my friends this mug when I first got it because it was like, this is so funny. And I showed it to my one friend and I'm like, oh, don't worry. I'll be putting this up in my cupboard. Nobody will see it. She's like, no, that is a showpiece. You put that out where everyone can see it. And I'm like, I just don't have the heart for it. But every once in a while, Grandpa would pour his coffee in there and drink it in front of us, and we would just be like, Grandpa has a naked lady.
Oh my gosh.
Grandpa's not going to heaven.
Well, here's the thing. I think nudity at Grandpa's house was not uncommon. Now, I have to admit, I used to sneak into their cupboard as a young lad and look at the naked lady
You're like,
cup.
boobs.
Totally. Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love coming here because of this naked lady cup.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. But Rosie, do you remember the first time I took you there to meet Grandma and Grandpa?
Yeah, talk about nudity. Okay, they must not have been expecting us or heard us coming. I don't know. But Clyde was like, oh, we just walk right into Grandma and Grandpa's house. Like, it was like knocking optional. We go in, both of your grandparents had no shirts on. Actually, I think your grandpa did have a shirt on, but it was like buttoned all the way down.
He always had his shirt unbuttoned.
Yeah.
He was always
big beer belly sitting out.
Oh my
He's
gosh.
not a skinny man.
Beer belly and boobs on Grandpa for sure.
And Grandma, wasn't the best to look at either without a shirt on. So it was like super awkward. And the weirdest thing is they were like not ashamed at all. Yeah. Like they never once were like, oh, let me button this up. Neither of them ever put shirts on the whole time that Clyde and I were visiting.
Did Grandma
that's
have
what's
a bra
funny.
on
No. It was bare.
No
it was
bra.
like bare.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think. She was probably 80 by that point, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking 80-year-old woman. And
oh my gosh.
The thing is Rosie just kind of made the assumption like, oh, maybe we should have called ahead. But you notice once we showed up,
No,
they didn't run back and put
nothing
shirts
changed.
on. No.
Yeah.
Those were going to be out no matter what.
It was the weirdest thing one of the weirder things I've experienced.
This one time, Roy and I, so this is when Roy and I first started dating. We were here visiting, and so I was like, let's go see my grandma and grandpa. Same deal. We didn't call ahead. But we did knock on the door. So we knock on the door, and grandma comes to the door, and she's like, come on in. And then we walk in, and grandpa's like, oh, I'm naked. And I'm like,
full nude?
Like you
he
full
didn't
nude?
have one particle of clothing on. He
Not
was
even socks?
not even socks. He was sitting in the... Grandpa was not a never nude. He was sitting in the recliner just watching TV, full glory, okay?
Oh
so
my
then
gosh.
I'm like, oh! And so I like stop by the door, kind of avert my eyes, and I'm like, Grandpa, we'll wait while you go get dressed. He's like, no! I'm okay. Come on in. He reaches over and grabs this little tiny towel that is folded in a square and just puts it over his junk.
Oh my gosh.
So it's just resting there, but you
Oh my
can still see his hips, his beer belly, and there's just this tiny little square just teetering on the edge of
Oh
his junk.
my gosh.
So then we're there talking to him for like more than a half hour, and the whole time Roy just has this look on his face like, please don't let that fall. Please don't let that fall.
Don't turn the AC
Oh
on. We don't want
my
that gust of wind to move it.
Well,
Exactly.
the craziest thing
It's
is
initiation into the family
Yeah.
by grandma and grandpa.
the craziest thing is that you got the nudie cup. We got the freaking chair, like Grandpa's chair.
Yeah, that chair he sat in nude. Wow.
I mean, it's leather and we got it cleaned and stuff, but I'm like, dude, I have seen Grandpa in this chair hundreds of times, mostly naked.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
You know, that's all I can say is like that chair has had some mileage and you guys should wear that thing with pride.
Oh my gosh.
Well, let's be honest. Whatever grandpa did, grandpa earned. You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
here's the backstory about our grandpa. Our grandpa served in World War II. And when I was very young, Mom told me, whatever you do, don't ask grandpa about the war. So what am I going to do when I walk in there? I'm going to ask about the war, right?
Yeah.
So I instantly was like, Grandpa, what happened in the war? And Mom, like, instantly, like, pretty much, you know, slapped me around or whatever. The whole time we were growing up, we never knew what Grandpa did in the war or anything.
No, he didn't like to talk about
No,
it.
it was like this dark secret. And we were never allowed to ask about it. We were never allowed to bring it up or anything.
Yeah,
you know?
we all knew that it had happened. We all knew there must have been something bad because you couldn't ever talk about it. And then you also knew, like, I knew that Grandpa, like, it affected Grandpa.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? But you didn't know exactly why. But I did know he had, like, cool money from Australia and New Zealand because every once in a while he'd pull it out and then he'd talk about riding in a big ship. And that was about all I knew.
Well, and this was kind of the cool thing. And we're going to get away from, like, funny stuff for just a second. But this was kind of the cool thing. When I got my orders that I was going to Iraq, Grandpa Rex called me one day and he said, I'm coming to town. We got to talk. And I was like, okay. So he came into town.
And this is a man who does not like to talk.
Yes, this is
Yeah.
a man who's never said something like personal to me in his entire life. He was always fun. He was always
He's like, pull my finger.
inappropriate with the finger thing, you know. So he sat me down and he said, okay, I'm going to tell you about when I served in the war. He talked to me for probably like 2 hours. There were a couple things that stood out. Number one, he was in a foxhole with someone that took the shrapnel of a grenade, and it very well easily could have been him, but he watched his friend die. That was number one. And he couldn't even tell that story without crying, you know, years later. Number two, at one point, they lost communication and needed to get a hold of the headquarters. And so his lieutenant gave Grandpa this communication wire or like an antenna. And he said, you need to climb up this tree so that we can contact the headquarters. And Grandpa scurries up this tree holding this antenna. And while he's up there, he starts taking enemy fire. They're shooting at him, and he's hanging onto this tree, just using the trunk as cover. As soon as the lieutenant says, like, okay, we made the call, he scurries down the tree, gets down there, and he was just like, holy cow, how am I still alive? And as soon as he finished telling me this, you want to know what I said?
What?
In my head? I said, I'm going to name my son after this guy. You know, he's had a good impact on me. He's been a fun grandpa. He's the best. Hilarious.
Yeah.
Right? But
then there's this deeper connection.
There's this deeper connection, yeah. And he shared that with me because he knew what I was about to go through, and I might face things that were similar. That was really cool, and I was so grateful. I was so grateful that I joined the Army in that moment.
Yeah.
Because you know what? Grandpa died probably 4 or 5 years later.
That's right.
Not many years later. Mm-hmm. And those stories would have been lost.
Yeah. Well, I know we all were like so moved that Grandpa had shared that stuff with you because it was stuff that we had never heard. It really did mean a lot to us. Like, Grandpa was just, I mean, he was such a funny guy, so it was hard sometimes to get to the heart of him. But in times like that, you just really understood where he was coming from in a different way. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I love Grandpa.
Absolutely. And we definitely miss Grandpa. Grandpa, I know he is listening because I know he would be a fan of this podcast.
Oh, totally.
He was the biggest idiot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He was a great idiot. Like, he would be in the Idiot Hall of Fame.
Do you
right?
remember Grandma always going, Rex?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then when he'd do something stupid, she'd go, well, heck, Rex.
Heck, Rex. Rex.
Heck.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of interesting because when I came to the family, like, they totally adopted me as their own.
Oh, yeah.
Losing Grandpa first, and then we lost Grandma a few years later, and, like, I don't think I've ever cried so hard in my life. Like, I loved them so much.
Yeah, we all miss them. And it's been years and years since they've passed.
Yeah.
So I do think, like, I've been trying really hard to live up to Grandpa's legacy. I'm like, how can I impart this humor and inappropriateness to my nieces and nephews?
Yeah.
In fact, I don't know if you remember the time that Claude, like, I was out with his kids. And Claude actually said to his kids, don't listen to Claudia. Do not. And then at one point he's like, do not talk to my children. And I was like, dude. But, you know, I think it's all in fun. So
honestly, you guys have such a great sense of humor, and it has to be from them because your parents do not have your guys' sense of humor. So
yeah, it definitely comes from Grandpa, I feel. So
every now and then, Mom will be a little sassy, and I'm like, oh, I see it.
She's got it.
Yeah, she's got it in there.
She is
just
his
suppresses.
Daughter.
Yeah. So I know I said there's no porn allowed on the podcast, but there is a pretty funny story that you have about Grandpa Rex and porn. And I'd really love for you to share it.
Yeah, it really has more to do with my grandmother, his wife. When I was little, and it's one reason I love sports, when I would go to town to visit Grandpa, we would
go to town.
That's what she said.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you for the setup, Rosie.
Do not interrupt.
Do we add that to the rules?
This is my podcast.
He's on a power trip. These are his rules.
Yeah, this is his podcast.
He's in charge.
All right. So
only if we let him be.
Yeah.
I used to spend summers watching baseball with Grandpa, but in order to watch baseball, he had to order these cable packages, and usually to get the obscure channels that the baseball games were going to be on, he had to like upgrade to the most extreme package. That also meant there were a lot of channels that you had access to that you probably shouldn't have access to, right? And so this one time I get left home alone with them. I mean, not home alone because Grandma and Grandpa were there, but I'm just like,
I mean, come on, who's actually watching you?
Oh yeah, they weren't like babysitters. Like if they were ever babysitting you, they weren't actually caring what you were doing or whatever. You know, it's like you'd go play in the yard or do whatever. Well, Grandpa and Grandma go out to the front to smoke a cigarette and leave me in the house by myself. And so I'm watching a baseball game or something, and then I start channel surfing. And I come across the first porno I ever saw in my life. I'm a young man. I'm very young, right? I mean, this thing was like softcore. Like, I mean, you could barely consider it porno. But to like my Mennonite eyes. I was like, oh my God.
Like the naughty plumber comes over to fix the pipes.
No, it wasn't even that hardcore.
She didn't have money for the pizza, you know, from the delivery guy.
Yeah, so I'm just sitting there watching this thing, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, I better pay attention to the door, because if they come in the door, I need to quickly change the channel. Right? Well, I got so enthralled in the show, and I have ADD, so it's hard to pay attention to multiple things.
The one time he pays attention to something.
Yeah.
Extreme focus on the boobs.
I am locked into that
TV. Boobies.
This girl's standing there topless.
Oh my gosh.
According to the storyline, she had been kidnapped, and now she's topless for some reason.
You're ridiculous.
And all of a sudden, I hear Grandma's voice, and she says, "Oh my!" And I was like, "Yeah!" And I like do that thing where you drop the remote and the batteries fall out, and you're trying to like jam them back in so you can change the channel. And she's like, "Well, Moses would not approve of this." So she tells me, "You better change it." And I was like, "Okay, Grandma." Before I even changed it, because I'm still loading the batteries, she just goes back outside, and then
she's like, proceed.
I know, and I'm like, wait, is she gone?
So I have to change it?
I guess I'll just keep watching. Anyways, so
my question is, did the woman get free of her kidnapper?
She did. What she ended up doing?
Dude, I've never seen a porn with like that kind of storyline. That's violent.
What she ended up doing was she wrote in lipstick across her boobs, "I've been kidnapped.
Oh my
Please help me."
And you know that's the only place people are looking, so of course they see the message.
Well, then,
dude,
this cop comes over for like a menage a trois.
Oh my gosh.
And then when she takes her top off, I was like 11. I don't know.
Did the cop?
I don't think
her?
I understood what was going to happen. Yeah, and when she took her shirt off, you know, the message, the cop was like, "Wait, you're under arrest," and then he like arrests the bad guy.
So there's and
then the cop and her proceed to have sex? Or?
I think so, probably.
Oh
I don't
my
know.
gosh!
I don't know.
Clyde, you watch some weird stuff.
Dude,
he was 11.
Every 11-year-old boy is not going to change that channel.
I dare an 11-year-old to change his channel.
Oh my gosh.
What I think is funny about that whole story is Grandma never even went to church. Like, Grandma does not get into church, and she's like saying that Moses is going to approve. Like,
what about Jesus or God? No, Moses is her go-to.
Moses of all people?
Well, I mean, he did make the commandments. Like, at least she clearly knew her biblical research. I don't know.
Yeah, but
those are like rules too.
Thou shalt not watch softcore porn is not on that list.
Gosh.
So
that's hilarious.
Clyde, is Moses your favorite because he made rules too?
Moses, I do like Moses.
I think Grandpa would have really respected you watching that if he had walked in.
Oh,
he'd be
yeah.
like, that's my grandson right
He'd
there.
be like, well, you're sitting in my chair, but move on over to the couch.
Do you want a course or a bud?
Yeah, seriously.
So, you know, one time when I was a kid, I was visiting. Actually, I was a little bit older. I was probably about 14. I was visiting Grandma and Grandpa, and I got the chicken pox. So I was stuck with Grandma and Grandpa when I was really sick. So what they started doing is they would try to give me regular people food, but I had chicken pox all the way down my throat. So they would like bring me a Diet Coke and be like, here, drink this. And I'd be like, I can't, because the bubbles would hurt so bad. And then they'd get really upset. They'd be like, drink it. I'm like, ah! So I'm like, so you're drinking the stuff and it's like, this is miserable. And so finally, I think I complained so much that they were like, we're just taking you home. So they load me in the van, and Grandpa early in the morning is like, oh, we'll just drive there and then we're going to turn around and drive back. And it's a 6-hour drive each way. As we get in the car, Grandpa had a cooler with sodas and stuff like that. So he is driving and he reaches back and he pulls out a beer,
oh my gosh,
and just starts chugging it while he's driving with me. And I'm like, dude, I was in driver's ed by this point, so I knew he was not supposed to be driving with a beer in his hand.
Oh my gosh.
was like, okay, here we go. We get home, they drop me off, and they're like, okay, bye. And then they turned around and
Oh my gosh.
like they did not stay. They just dropped me off.
Dude, that sounds like you, Clyde. Seriously.
It was pretty funny. Yeah, I think we all inherited some different qualities from Grandpa for sure.
Clyde comes up with the most craziest stuff. He'll be like, okay, we're going to drive there and back in the same day. And
Exactly.
I get car sick. So coming here and doing a podcast and then getting back in the car for another 6-hour drive is a freaking nightmare for me. But Clyde will do it, man.
Plus,
I'll do
you
it.
know we're going to talk forever. Like,
Yeah.
it's never going to work for you to only be here for a few hours.
Well,
Yeah.
the prospect of having to go home sometimes is the only way I can get you to shut up. So,
Oh my God.
That's it.
Claudia was taking a drink as I said that. You almost lost your drink.
I almost spit it all over your expensive microphone
Dude.
and your $12 cover.
I wish the audience could have seen what I just saw, but they can only hear my
my gosh.
reenactment.
I controlled it. Don't
You
worry.
know, one thing I do appreciate about your parents is they taught you to always wear clothes. Like,
Yeah, that is true.
yeah, I haven't seen a naked November, so I'm very grateful.
We are very careful about
Yeah.
that. I mean, hello, Clyde even wears his socks in
He's
the
a
shower.
never nude.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. Dude, how could you not love Grandma and Grandpa, man? They're so awesome.
They were specimens.
Yeah.
specimens. And that house was
Seriously.
definitely clothing optional.
It
Yeah.
was.
I just felt bad for their neighbors.
Exactly.
Which leads me into our idiot spotlight.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I would like to spotlight neighbors. Not
Idiot
just any
neighbors.
neighbors, but your idiot neighbors. Now, if you have neighbors, whether you live in an apartment or a house or wherever you live, you have neighbors. And I guarantee you, you have at least 1 to 20 terrible idiot neighbors.
Yeah, and if you can't identify the idiot neighbor,
You are the
you
idiot
are the
neighbor.
idiot neighbor.
Speaking of which,
Yeah.
not to change the subject or anything, but Clyde set fire to our neighbor's house.
Oh
Yes.
my gosh.
I did.
It's like an
Remember
epic
that?
story that comes up every Thanksgiving.
Tell your listeners,
Yeah.
Clyde, because this is the biggest idiot neighbor I have ever heard
He
of.
was the idiot
Yes.
neighbor in this case.
Now, I've been the idiot neighbor pretty much my whole life, right?
True that.
Yeah.
Starting from when I used to hit tennis balls over the fence, or wiffle balls or whatever, and climbing over. I used to get yelled at by our next door neighbors.
Dude, Anne called the cops on you one time for climbing her tree.
Yeah, she came at me with a broom one
Yeah.
time. Yeah, I've been the idiot neighbor my whole life. But when I was in 8th grade, we had a new family that moved in next door. And they were the fun family, right? The parents were cool. They had kids that were my age. And, these were free-range children. We weren't free-range children. Like, our parents had expectations on us. Those kids
You
could...
did not mess with our parents.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Those kids could do whatever they want. So they would, teepee people in the neighborhood, and their parents would laugh about it. So, even if the other family was like, hey, your kid teepeed my house, their parents would be like, I know, so funny. And so it kind of became this neighborhood thing that, everyone has to get them back. Me and a buddy one night set out to teepee their house. Except they had these giant trees in the front yard.
Wait.
Yes.
Before you get to that, you had asked Mom if you could go out, and she said no. And so then you snuck out of the house after hours to go with your friend.
Well, why do you got to bring that up?
Because it's going to be
It's
very
important.
relevant
Yes.
to the story later. Proceed.
So we're teepeeing their house in the middle of the night. And they had these huge trees in their front yard that had teepee in it from a previous attack from someone else. And so the guy I was with was like, let's throw more toilet paper up there. And I was like, that's kind of messed up because those trees are so high that teepee's never coming down. Instead, I was like, we should make a gazebo stemming from their front porch so that when they open the door in the morning, there's just teepee everywhere right out their front door. And we could make it look like a gazebo. And he's like, cool. And so we go and we're looking around how are we going to do this? And we realize there's this light fixture up there. And we're like, if we hang the toilet paper from that, we could make it look really cool. And so he gets on his hands and knees. I stand on his back, and I'm shoving the toilet paper in there. And, we ended up making it look really, really cool.
For like an hour, maybe.
Yeah. So then we run out and start playing on the golf course, and we're like having a good time. It's about 4 a.m, and I'm thinking like, yeah, pretty soon we should head back home. And keep in mind, I said before that I used to sneak out of the house all the time and play on the golf course, right? And then I would just come in the morning and just sleep downstairs. Well, around the time where we were kind of getting ready to go back home, I noticed that there was this weird cloud in the sky.
Oh, boy.
And I was like, whoa, look at that cloud. I was like, where did that cloud come from? And he's like, I don't know. And the more I looked at it, the more I was like, the bottom of the cloud is like red or whatever.
Gosh.
I was like, what is with this cloud? Then it just hit me. I was like, did something happen to the teepee in their house?
Oh my gosh.
So we both just start running to the part of the golf course where we're going to be able to see their house. And right when we get there, we realize there's 3 fire trucks in front of their house. Oh my gosh. I'm like, did the light start a fire with the toilet paper?
I wonder
really.
it would be a problem to shove a bunch of toilet paper on a scalding hot light bulb and then
gosh.
Up onto the roof so that the fire can go all the way to the roof.
Yeah.
I wonder if that would be an issue.
Dude, you're not only a bad neighbor in this, but you're just straight up idiot.
Well, yeah, here's the thing. So we were both like, well, shoot, I guess the night's over. And he takes off running to go home, but he lives the complete other direction.
Right. Oh my gosh.
I live next door, and I have to somehow get back in my house without the 3 firemen and the police car that's sitting there seeing me. So I'm jumping through like people's yards. I'm hopping fences to get there through some back way. I get home. I go up in the room. I cry myself to sleep. And then my mom wakes me up in 3 hours and is like, oh my gosh, the house next door caught on fire. And I'm just like, wow.
You don't say, Mom.
Oh my gosh.
Right? And so all of a sudden we get this phone call. Mom answers the phone, and I hear Mom go like, oh my gosh, you're kidding. No. Oh. And I'm thinking like, oh, shoot, this must be my friend Braden's mom, right? I'm like, oh, shoot. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, Mom already knows it was me.
Right.
I instantly, as soon as Mom gets off the phone, Mom comes over and she's like, guess who started the fire? And I'm like, who?
Oh my God.
And she said, it was Braden. I can't believe it. Oh my gosh.
You're like, how dare he?
I know.
Him and I are breaking up for sure.
I know. And then she leaves, and I had this moment where I was sitting there thinking like, oh my gosh, he didn't rat me out. And then I thought about the consequences of lighting a house on fire. And I said, this is too big for one kid to take the fall.
That's right.
And so I went to Mom and I said, Mom, I did it too. And Mom was like, well, your dad's in the garage. Let's go tell him. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, right? Let's just say I was grounded for an entire summer. Right?
Yeah.
At the time, I was in college. And so Mom called me and she started telling me, you won't believe what happened, to the neighbors. And she's like, and I wanted Clyde to see, this is what happens if you TP somebody.
Yeah.
So I took him over and I showed him, look, they threw this toilet paper up on the roof and it caught fire and this whole family could have died, and luckily they were safe. We should add that to the story.
Yeah.
Thank God for competent firemen, right?
That's right. So, but they were woken up in the middle of the night by the fire trucks knocking on their door. They didn't even know their house was on fire. So you can imagine how startling that would be.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So then Mom said that, she showed you this and you were acting weird. You were acting kind of guilty or something. And she was like, but I knew that I had told him he couldn't go out. So he wouldn't have been there.
Oh my gosh.
And then all of a sudden you went upstairs and started cleaning your room. So Mom's like, Clyde never cleans his room. Why is Clyde all of a sudden cleaning his room? And then eventually you
caved.
I fessed up.
Yeah.
Dude, I like how different the two of your stories are. Like, seriously, Clyde is one for the dramatic, if you know what I mean. And he makes stuff up along the way.
Well, no, I had to clean my room just, damage control, because you're going to be in less trouble if you make your parents happy.
Here's my favorite thing, though, about that story, which your dad shared with me, is that it goes on record that you are an idiot because of the police report when he called to interview you.
What does it say?
Yeah. Well, according to Papa November, it says the boy is not an arson. He's just an idiot.
Yes. No, that's 100% true.
It's official.
Because in order for the insurance to pay for it, there had to be an investigation. Because if there was arson, their insurance wasn't going to pay for it. I was going to have to pay for it, right?
Oh, my gosh.
And so I had to meet with a police officer, and they interviewed us. And Dad sat me down before, and he said, whatever you do, when you sit with that police officer, you better not lie. He's like, liars get in bigger trouble. And I was like, yes, sir. So I
won't, Papa.
Yeah, I sat with the police officer. The police officer asked me questions. Questions like, have you ever felt a light bulb? I'm like, no.
Are you aware what happens to toilet paper when it is exposed to extreme heat for an extended period of time?
I told the cop my side of the story. He also talked to my friend Braden. I guess we had similar sides of the story, right? We were just two dumb kids, that didn't know light bulbs were hot. I'd never touched a light bulb before, right? And so we did this really dumb thing. Dad was absolutely correct. It says on the police report, these kids were not arsonists. They were just idiots.
And so an idiot was born.
Yes, if you think we do this whole I Love My Idiot podcast and the idiot thing is just kind of like silly or whatever.
Oh, no.
It's been a lifelong journey.
It is official. There is a police report stating that I am an idiot.
Oh my gosh, you are an idiot.
It's the official record.
I may have only been in 8th grade, but I haven't grown out of that idiotness.
It's the truth.
True.
I want to say, too, while we're talking about this particular neighborhood and our neighbors, so you were talking about Anne, who is the 96-year-old woman who lives next door to you, and who I will lovingly refer to as Annette forever. So I just want to say, I and my family, all of us, have been the idiot neighbors. So we moved in 40 years ago to that house. And at that time, Anne came over and introduced herself. And for some reason, my parents decided her name was Annette. And so for 40 years, we all referred to her as Annette. And then one time, and this was late in life, like this, I was probably 35.
This was like 15 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So after we'd known her for 25 years.
She had seen all of us grow up. You weren't even born by this point. And by the time we find out her real name, you're moved out of the house,
in
right?
fact, I was in Iraq when we found out her real name.
And it became real big news. So I sold Pampered Chef at the time. And so we were at a party and she was ordering something from this party. And so she was having me fill out the form. And so I wrote Annette on it. And then she says, well, actually, my name is Anne. And I'm like, what? And then I'm just like, why do we call you Annette? And she's like, I don't know.
Dude, knowing your dad, it probably was him because he names things the weirdest
stuff. He always calls things the wrong name.
He doesn't know how to pronounce anything. Dad,
remember when he drove the Hyundai?
Yeah, we're like, Dad, it's a Hyundai. Hyundai.
Oh my gosh. She probably was like, my name is Anne, and he was like, short for Annette. We're going to call you Annette.
It's nice to meet you, Annette.
Her husband was also, so Bill, he was like the idiot neighbor too, because not only did he call the police on you, like he was really grouchy with kids, and like, so then this family with 5 kids moves next door. So I'm sure we were driving him nuts, but he was always like the foil to all of our little escapades when we were kids. And he had a naked lady tattoo on his forearm that he had gotten when he was in the Marines so many years ago. And so then it was just sagging and
oh my
weird.
gosh.
And it had turned blue. And it like barely looked like a woman anymore. It was really creepy.
Yeah.
But anyways, it was really fun. And I do remember they had this beautiful flower garden that they worked so hard on. And our sister Chloe, one time for May Day, went over to their yard, cut off their flowers. And I mean, their garden is like a master gardener's paradise. It is a beautiful yard of all flowers. So you should not mess with these. So she's cutting them off. And then she goes and knocks on their door and hands them to Annette and says, "Happy May Day. I picked these for you." So yeah, I guarantee they were thinking Chloe was the idiot neighbor at that point.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because when we moved in, Annette was really excited, or Anne rather, was very
I call her Annette.
Excited.
She will always be Annette in my book.
She got really excited because she saw Dad's truck in the yard. The people who bought the house from your parents were horrible neighbors. Like, we have heard horror stories since we moved in about the only 3 years did a non-November live in this home. But in those 3 years, these neighbors had traumatized everybody, both on the backside and side to side and the front of your house and your neighborhood. They were terrors on the neighborhood. So anyways, Anne saw Dad's truck in the yard and was so excited because she thought they had bought the house back. Like, we missed our house.
Right.
Anyways, so then Dad proceeds to tell Anne that, oh no, my son bought the house. Well, she didn't tell Anne which son had bought the house. So anyways, then Clyde and I are like
anyone but Clyde.
Yes, exactly. You should have seen the disappointment when I went up to Anne and I was like, Clyde and I bought the house. She was like, oh. She's like, we were hoping for Clinton, you know?
We want a Harvard grad on our street.
Anyways, so then Clyde had to do some makeup work. Like, we ended up doing a bunch of her yard work, and we cut down this tree that she hated.
We won her over when we cut down the tree.
Jeez, you guys will do anything to win friends.
We really will. Yeah.
See, and then I'm the opposite, so I do not talk to my neighbors. I do not like people to be in my business, and so I don't even say hi. I just walk into my house. And then Roy is like the nicest guy, so he makes friends with all of our neighbors. So he could tell you the names of all of our neighbors. He can tell you what they're up to. He'll be out in the street talking to them. In fact, if he's ever supposed to be around and I can't find him, I always know he's outside, like loaning tools to somebody or helping them with some project. So I'm pretty sure I'm the idiot neighbor there. However, I would like to think of them all being idiots for like talking to each other. Hello. This is the November way.
Well, you straight up to my face called me an idiot because I talk to neighbors too.
Yeah, you're like Roy.
Yeah, you're like, who talks to their neighbors? Like, or it was really weird because one time I was talking to our neighbor and you're like, well, this is awkward.
Yeah,
like,
you said that right in front of the neighbor.
And I was like, dude.
Well, it was awkward.
We're like, yeah, it's awkward now. Thanks, Claudia.
And then Claudia,
just wanted to point it out.
Yeah, Claudia and Clyde start walking away, and we can totally hear you guys talking. And you're like, that's awkward. Like, why does she talk to your neighbors? And the neighbor was like, you talk to me all the time. I'm like, I know, they're Novembers and they're weird.
Subtlety's never been my strong suit.
Well, the best part about that neighborhood, so the neighborhood before we moved into this one, we had a really interesting street. But on that street, there was a Larry, a Gary, a Terry, and a Carrie.
And a Clyde.
So, like, we were surrounded by all these people with similar sounding names.
Yeah.
You should have seen the torture it was for the Novembers to figure out who was who. Because all the names
Larry,
sounded the
Terry.
same. Yeah, it was hilarious.
How am I supposed to remember that?
Yeah. He's
just
like,
call him Annette and be done with it.
I'm just going to start saying Airy.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it wasn't until we actually moved away from that neighborhood that Clyde finally got their names right.
That's right. As we were pulling the moving truck away, I'm like, bye, Gary? He's like, yep. I'm like, yeah. Nailed it.
This reaffirms to me why it's better to just not even know your neighbors' names. You
Yeah.
can't get them wrong if you don't know their name.
Yeah. Well, we are not winning a lot of brownie points with some of our neighbors because we go all out at Christmas time with the Christmas lights.
You're blinding them.
Yeah.
Like the
Yes.
Griswolds.
We did have a complaint filed against us from a neighbor because of our Christmas lights this year.
Now, at our old house, the guy across the street, Gary, he was an absolute Scrooge. And we would deck our house out really well. He wouldn't even do anything, right? Mm-hmm. And then he would just mock us while we were out, like, putting the lights up. He'd go sit on his porch in a little chair and just watch us and be like, have fun in a few months taking those down.
Yeah, your electricity bill's probably pretty high. Of course, he's like 70 years old.
Yeah.
Like,
we're like, dude, go back inside. At one point during the Christmas season, he told us, well, you may have outdone me in the yard, but I outdid you in the Christmas tree department.
yeah.
Right? And so he tells us that he went out into the woods and cut down some Christmas tree. I'm guessing illegally. I don't know. Right?
Well, here's the thing. I love that man. I'm just going to throw it out there. Like,
What?
he's
dead.
he's like one of my favorite neighbors.
How much do you love him?
that we've ever
On
had.
a scale of 1 to 10.
Which is funny because when we moved into the neighborhood, people were like, "Don't talk to him,"
They're like, "Watch out for Gary."
yeah, like I bonded immediately with him. So him and I had a thing, right? Like,
well, and we all grew up with him. He's
Yeah.
friends with our parents, so
It's like the
we
same
know
neighborhood.
His quirks very well.
yeah. So, anyways, he goes up into the woods and gets this tree. I mean, the dude's been bragging about this tree. Like, I got to see this tree. So I sneak into his house. I take a selfie next to his Christmas tree, and I send him a text of me next to his Christmas tree, and I'm like, "This is the tree you've been bragging about?"
It was 3 days before Christmas.
Yeah.
Not one ornament
No.
was on the
Oh.
tree.
Yeah, it's like we got the tree in the house, but then we haven't decorated the tree. It was so funny. But then he was
That
like,
is funny.
"That is breaking and entering," is what he texted me back. You know,
He would prosecute.
yeah, it was so funny. It was so funny. Anyways, so fast forward to this Christmas. It's been a year since that time. On Christmas Day, what do I get from Gary? That same picture
that's
sent back to me, and
hilarious.
he's like, "I haven't forgotten."
I love it.
Oh my
If our
gosh.
house ever gets broken into, he's suspect number one.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah,
Well, it's hard to live amongst other people, right?
Yeah.
It just
Everybody
totally
has
is.
different standards.
Yeah.
We are people that like to keep our yard worked on and clean.
yeah,
And we've lived across the street from people that grow dandelions like they're trying to grow.
yeah. Or
right?
like our neighbor.
Like it's their heart.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like, people haven't used
Seriously.
dandelions as medicine for some time. Maybe you should pick those, and
Yeah.
I'm out there picking the 3 dandelions in my yard, and as soon as I'm done, I look across the road, and this gust of wind just carries all the seeds.
It's the worst.
And you just feel like, oh, that neighbor's an idiot. Why aren't you
Yeah.
out picking your dandelions
They're
or
like,
whatever?
that neighbor's an idiot. Why are they picking their
I know.
dandelions?
Yeah,
they just grow
exactly.
back, right? And
They
so,
add yellow to your yard.
so being a neighbor is hard because
Yeah.
everyone's got different standards. You've got people like Mr. Rogers that wants everyone to be included. You've got people like Miss Claudia here
You're welcome.
that
Yeah.
wants nothing to do with people, right?
Right.
And you've got people that want to keep clean yards. You've got people that want to not keep clean yards or just lay junk around.
Or like our neighbor now who parks like a bunch of vehicles in their yard. It's like, dude.
Yeah, she parked a motorhome in the grass that
Yeah.
like separates our yard from her yard, right next to our yard. And it's this eyesore that's like, dude, you're ruining
Yeah.
our view of the road and everything, and it's
And
just
killing our
frustrating.
grass.
But in some ways, she probably thinks we are idiots for
Dude,
one thing or
hello,
another.
your camo tarp is covering your trailer parked right next to that. So now you're going to complain
Yeah.
about that. But, our tarp is
Okay.
just fine. Hello.
Here's the deal, though, with that is that's Clyde's idiot move because that thing is supposed to be parked on the other side of the fence. but he is too lazy to move it where it's supposed to go.
Clyde.
I know. Seriously, Clyde.
I feel like we just hit. It just got real.
It did just get real.
See the look on Clyde's
I know.
face. He looks like he's about to cry.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of an excuse, but I think I just gotta own it.
You don't have one.
I just gotta own it. Yes, I used the trailer and I didn't put it back where it went. I got lazy. My bad. And now I'm probably the idiot neighbor. People are like, dude, what's with that tarp?
Why is that guy so obsessed with camo?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, I'm going to tell you guys about the biggest idiot that I've had as a neighbor. It was when I was in college. So yeah, I had like 6 or 7 roommates at the time, in case you haven't noticed a theme.
All dogs, I'm sure, right?
Well, hello. A girl's got to live. Anyways.
You always got to be the cutest girl in your room. You know what I mean?
You gotta stay hot. Yeah, you could show up in sweats and it's like, I'm killing it. Anyways, so
you digress.
Yes, I do. There are many instances in this house.
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to tell you guys about 2 of them. One is about the toilet paper, and one is about this epic fight we heard our neighbors have.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so the first one, the toilet paper lady. So this lady lived next door. I don't know what the deal was with her, but I think she was a little bit of a shut-in. And then her way of socializing was to show up at your house and ask for a roll of toilet paper. And then she would exchange goods and services in exchange for it. So one time she brought like a pack of double mint gum with 2 pieces missing out of it.
Gosh.
And was like, this is all I have. Can I have a roll of toilet paper? And we would always be like, just take the toilet paper. And she'd be like, no, I want to exchange. Or she'd bring you like a can of like really bad like vegetables or something. One time she brought us like a candle that you would get at the dollar store. And it was like this Santa candle. And she's like, here, I'll exchange this. So my roommates and I are like, we should burn Santa. Like, so we light Santa, and it seriously like started shooting flames up super high. It was like this really weird cheap candle that like it incinerated so fast. We were like, what the hell? But anyways, like, she always had this knack for showing up whenever there was people over or we were having a party. So there'd be a lot of people over, and then knock, knock, knock. Here's the toilet paper lady. So pretty soon, all my friends knew the toilet paper lady. Oh my gosh. So it was hilarious. So also in this same house, it was a duplex. And so on the other side of it was this older couple who would drink and get angry and have these fights. Oh my gosh. And so what we would do is we would turn off the TV and we'd sit against the wall and listen to these fights. Well, anyways.
That's more entertaining than anything on the TV.
It really was. I mean, don't worry. It was only verbal fights. So it's not like they would have knockdown dragouts or anything. So we always would listen because they would just say these really funny, belligerent, drunk things at each other. But this one time on Christmas Eve, they got in this huge fight, and then the guy is like, and these are old people, like they're probably 70, right? And the guy's like, I'm leaving. And so she runs out in the yard, and then she says, have a Merry effing Christmas.
Dude, that's hilarious.
Every year we'd be like, have a Merry effing Christmas. Just yelling it. It was so funny.
Oh my gosh.
Those were my biggest idiot.
Duplex
neighbors.
living and apartment living.
Oh,
you get some
worst.
weird neighbors.
Oh my gosh.
That first apartment Rosie and I were living in, you know, the one where I was crashing on her couch, quote unquote. There was an empty apartment below us that was vacant for a while, and all of a sudden, this new family moves in, and they had 6 kids.
Yeah, it was crazy.
And I looked at Rosie, and I was like, I thought the landlord said there was a max allowed of 3 kids, and these weren't big apartments.
Yeah.
So a couple moves in, 6 kids. You know, one day, Rosie's sitting by the door doing some homework, and down below, she hears a knock at the door, and it's the landlord knocking on that house. And the landlord's like, I'm really confused because I've been watching, and I see that there's 6 kids here, And looking at the application, it said you only had 3 kids. And the husband said, no. I have 3 kids. And she has 3 kids.
Oh my gosh.
I believe they meant the total, not just what each of you brings.
Yeah.
To the
And she
picture.
kept being like, so you have 6 kids. And he's like, no. I have 3 kids. And he just kept
my
repeating
gosh.
it.
Oh my
And
gosh, that's
anyways,
hilarious.
this conversation got nowhere. And then all of a sudden, one day, the mom just up and disappeared. Like, just left. Ran out on him.
Now
so
how
here's
many kids
this
do they
dad. I mean,
Did she take the kids?
she took no kids.
Yeah.
Here's this dad with
OMG.
6 kids.
Oh my gosh,
Right?
yeah. And
And
he was a chain
all
smoker.
boys, and they were like out of control.
Oh my
my
gosh.
And his only method of parenting was just to yell and scream.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's fun
Right?
as a neighbor.
And these boys would do the weirdest things. I mean, and boys are crazy anyways, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, I would hear like the table sliding across the floor. And not just like, oh, we bumped the table and it moved. I'm talking like, you must be moving the table from like next to the fridge so you can get up
it
on
was
top of the fridge.
horrible.
So it'd be like,
Oh my gosh.
and then you'd hear, hey, move that back.
Oh my gosh. Well, honestly, I would rather have that than the chain smoking that he did because it would just be coming in all of our windows. And you weren't even supposed to smoke inside the apartments, but I swear smoke would be coming up through the vents.
Well,
like, it was horrible.
I lived in an apartment once, and the people were smoking pot, and it was going directly into the vents, and it was just
so
pouring
horrible.
into our office. And I lived with a bunch of really prude girls who were Mennonites.
Oh my
and
gosh.
So they were like scandalized by this, and they were like, "What is that smell?" And I'm like, "That's pot."
Like, is there a
Yeah.
skunk around
I
here?
don't like, you know, when you
Yeah.
somebody who's never smelled it before, it's like, yeah, that's what that is.
Oh my
Hello?
gosh.
That's weird. How did you know what it
I
smelled
know.
like?
I cannot confirm or deny. We also had people that lived above us that partied like crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And they would play quarters on the floor. So they'd be
Oh.
like shooting the quarters into the shot glasses and stuff. And so it'd be like clink, clink, clink on. And the parties never started till like 2:00 in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
And so one time I was so mad because I had to work at 7:00 on a Saturday. So I was trying to get some sleep. And then at 2:00 in the morning, probably like 50 people showed up at their house.
Oh my
And then
gosh.
they were playing quarters and doing all this stuff. I just ran up there in my pajamas and just banged on that door. And I was
Yeah.
like, knock it off. So then, anyways, my roommates and I, you know, all 6 or 7 of us, we're like this mean gang of angry
oh my
women.
gosh.
Super upset in our flannel pajamas.
Yeah.
But anyways, we went and talked to our landlord because we're like, we're moving out because this is ridiculous. So he ended up kicking those girls out because he wanted to keep us because we weren't all wild and crazy
Yeah.
with the parties.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
that's how you get rid of your neighbors.
Yeah. Oh, we've had some bad neighbors, haven't we, Clyde?
We have. In one apartment, this was when we were in college, the apartment above us had a group full of slutty chicks. Mm-hmm. The apartment below us had the party dudes.
Yes.
Oh no.
And they would always seem to
constant hookups,
the hookup, and then you'd see
gravitating
the
towards
walk of shame
It
in the
was
morning.
it was a pretty interesting cultural phenomenon to see these girls come out of that apartment and you could hear them walking up the stairs and I can't believe I did it again, you know.
I know, and separating these two crazy situations was this married couple with 2 children.
Yeah.
Oh, how
Right?
nice.
Yeah. But
Hello,
the deal
children.
so-
Let's learn about the birds and the bees.
Yeah.
the deal was though, our kids, because they were babies at the time, we were like, listen, they're gonna cry all night. We had the philosophy that we let them cry it out. So the deal was that you're gonna hear some baby crying. We're not gonna make our babies be quiet.
And you're going to hear
Yeah.
Yeah. Tit for tat.
And so
Literally.
we wouldn't complain about them if they didn't complain about us, and it was a great situation.
It was a great
way to
arrangement.
make
Yeah.
a win-win with
I
your
know.
idiot
I know.
neighbors.
Idiot
Exactly.
neighbors can have some symbiosis.
Yes.
That's really good.
There we go.
Well, it's been another great episode. Thank you so much, Claudia, for letting us come crash your house.
You're welcome.
It's always fun to have you on the podcast, and we're really, really lucky that you're here.
It. Yeah, it's fun. I really enjoy spending time with you guys, and it's a fun way to kind of call Clyde out for all of his BS.
Yeah.
You know, someone's got to keep Clyde honest around here.
Awesome. Well, it's been another great episode. Don't forget, you can listen to our podcast on any of your favorite podcasting platforms.
Yeah, and thank you for joining us this week. Make sure you recommend our show to a friend. If you love our show, shut up.
No, I will not follow the rules. I am saying something.
Yes. Okay,
Dude.
What is it, Claudia?
I don't know. I don't really have anything to say. I just want to interrupt.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry.
We gotta figure out a new strategy.
Yeah.
Like just randomly cutting off the episode.
I do think you
Right.
just have to unhook my mic.
Yeah,
'cause that's the only way you're
pre-record the
gonna-
ending.
I will lean over into yours. Don't
Ooh,
worry.
I like that. Pre-record the ending.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Check out our website at ilovemyidiot.com.
And don't forget to tell your idiot you love them.
We love you, Claudia.
Well, this just got awkward.
I love my idiot.
And then there's Clyde who's like, bring me a bowl of ranch. Can I have a spoon with this? I need to drink it. Can I have a straw?
Yes, exactly.